Good afternoon. Firstly, I'd like to thank the organizers who invited me in this event and gave me the chance to present my version of the truth amongst many other significant presenters who have already presented their versions of the truth. So I'm going to present to you my version of the truth. So what could that be? That's probably a subjective kind of truth, and what I understand that is probably some subjective interpretation of my reality. And of course, this cannot be one reality, it's many realities. In the same sense that Nelson Goodman talked about worlds, creating worlds, perceiving, representing worlds in his book, Ways of World Making. So I'm going to present to you a glimpse, some aspects of my reality. And this, in the particular case of the person that talks here, includes a lot of virtual reality. So, and because virtual reality is quite a hot topic right now, I think it's appropriate to discuss that and to discuss issues that relate to the making of virtual reality experiences. I'll say a few words about where I come from. I've studied architecture as a first degree in National Technical University of Athens, and then went on to study computer-aided design, and I did my PhD on exactly that subject that I'm going to talk to you about, the design of virtual environments, and particularly space in virtual environments. I did that back in the 90s, when we had the first wave of virtual environment technology. I'm going to talk to you about that in a few minutes. And I've been a scientist and designer from this aspect currently, and since 2002 I've been working and teaching in the National Kapodistrian University of Athens in the Faculty of Communication and Media Studies. And I head the Special Media Research Group there, which is a part of the New Technologies Laboratory that we have in the department. I've been also a practicing artist since the 80s. I was a musician back then. And since the 90s, I've been creating interactive installation artworks. And funnily enough, this is very relevant because virtual reality, and that was one of the reasons that I started off researching and investigating virtual reality, is that I realized that virtual reality was a unique platform where I could incorporate my two main loves and passions, which was music and making space. I think this will probably be more well understood as I proceed. So let's start quickly. What is virtual reality? Now, virtual reality is interactive, three-dimensional graphics. It's an environment consisting of interactive 3D graphics, and it has to be freely navigable. You have to be able to play and interact with objects in there. Not all computer games are virtual reality. In fact, very few. But games are related to the evolution of virtual reality. And of course, and one more thing I have to stress, cyberspace is virtual reality. I am totally against the idea of cyberspace being related to the web. The web is not cyberspace. Cyberspace is a multi-user virtual environment of a huge global scale, at least as William Gibson coined the term. What is not virtual reality? Panoramic 360-degree video is not virtual reality, whatever they tell you. It's not. 3D animation you see in movies is not virtual reality. Virtual reality has to be interactive and freely navigable. There is many different types of experiences afforded by the composition of 3D graphics and physical environmental stimuli. And this is a continuum of such systems that afford different kinds of experiences. Now, going back to the end of the 80s, we had the first wave of virtual reality technology. And that's where I began working on the subject back in 1993. And there were many problems, though, involved there. Virtual reality was neither mature as a technology, it was not robust enough, and of course, it was no way affordable. So it could never become a consumer product. Now we experience the second wave of virtual reality technology. There's a few key points, a few turning points that have given us this possibility. Firstly, the evolution, of course, of real-time in 3D interactive 3D graphics technologies, both in terms of the graphics engines and in terms of the software libraries that support the use of these systems. The authoring tools, many game engines have evolved to be very complex authoring tools and quite often freely available. I/O devices are more robust and cheaper. And the key point, we say, is the emergence of Oculus Rift, a cheap, high-quality HMD, head-mounted display, simulation gear that you see in all the adverts that relate to virtual reality. And the HTC Vive, of course, is also another one which is very important. So when this came along, this was a turning point. VR started its comeback, you can say. And another very important key point is the acquisition of the Oculus Rift company by Facebook, which probably hints to the possibility of some sort of a convergence, which me and many other people foresee, a sort of convergence of the social networking systems and immersive experiences. I won't go too much into that because this is all speculative, because there's still so many problems involved with this possibility, but I think we can see this coming. Now, a virtual reality, but this is an illusion. Huh? Is it a reality? It is a reality. Of course, we can get into a big discussion from a philosophical perspective as to what is a reality and what is not. I mean, and many will tell you that what we are experiencing now, face-to-face communication, is not a reality. It's mediated. It's still very much mediated. So, you know, this is also mediated. So what's the difference? Another significant thing is that there's evidence that proves that the use of immersive virtual reality systems have a significant impact on the plasticity of the brain, on what happens to the user, on the user's brain. So what I mean by that is that people, for instance, that have been exposed to virtual environment experiences, immersive experiences, have felt less pain. They don't think they feel less pain. It's been measured that they experience less pain. That's in the case of patients with extreme burns who are being immersed in such environments. And also, another very interesting experiment that has been conducted by Professor Ushiba at Keio, Faculty of Science in Japan. He's worked with paraplegic patients, and he studied the activity in their brain that shows the projection, as Heidegger has discussed this, you know, the projection that we experience before we move towards some place. So this will to move, and a paraplegic patient cannot feel that. So these people actually, after being immersed in virtual environments, do experience that. So their brain changes because of that. So to me, that's pretty much real, or it has a very real impact. So I'll quickly run through some of the main, through the process of designing virtual environments. It's a very complex thing. It involves the interactive design aspect, and this is a series of aspects that we need to consider when we are making virtual environments. It also involves the creation of content, and please keep this thought in mind a little bit, because I think this is very important. And the convergence of all these forms of content in an interactive, spatial, environmental context means the composition of a virtual environment experience. And of course, it involves the evolution of technological infrastructure. That's probably the first thing, and that's the thing that's very advanced now. And also, when we talk about social VR, it involves the creation and maintenance of sustainable social virtual environments. And of course, there's all these different versions of technologies like mixed reality and augmented reality. There's no time for me to discuss now. And these are a series of methods that we have to create content. Now, there's two problems, and there's two which to me are more like driving forces to work with this medium. Back in the 90s when I started working with this medium, one of the main reasons was that I couldn't understand why people using virtual reality were just designing real-life buildings. I mean, here you had a medium which had the potential to realize wherever you imagined, to make it actually feel real for people who were immersed in it. So that was one of the main driving forces that I wanted to investigate, how to create spaces which were in no way realistic, where whatever else apart from realistic. And of course, when you use virtual reality as a training tool, you need realism. You need as much realism as you can get. But when you don't need that, then what do? That's a big and difficult design issue. And quite quickly, and after the 20, 23 years that I've worked on it, now that the technology is mature and it's almost ready to become a consumer product, I realized that one of the most important problems with creating virtual environments is that we have a lack of knowledge on how to create content. We have a lack of content that will have an emotional impact, as narrative, for instance, for virtual environments. And we have a lack of understanding of the potentiality of the medium, because virtual reality is a medium, is not a technology, is a media technology, and to be more precise, is a media interface. So I wanted to sort of conclude the theoretical part of what I'm going to say and then move on to the more lively audiovisual stuff to conclude that, to say that there's a serious need to investigate and experiment, creatively experiment with creating content and experiences where this content will be positioned for utilizing the potential of VR as a medium. So that's exactly what I've been doing in the last 23 years. I will show you quickly some of my experimental works back in the 90s, where I was trying to understand how people behaved in these environments, how people navigated, orientated, acted in these virtual environments. I've conducted a series of studies on that. I've also experimented creatively with some artistic works, with interactive sound also. This is a design project that we did back in 1999 in the University of Athens when I was working in the Department of Informatics with the virtual reality group there. This is a design of a virtual museum which incorporated 10 museums, 9 museums of the University of Athens and the C.A.A.D museum too. And so these are glimpses into the design of this. And you see that there's no realistic building here. So that's exactly... I was lucky enough to be able to implement my concepts and my ideas that I came up with in my PhD in this big project and other artistic experimentations with virtual environments. More recently, we are working with my colleagues in the Special Media Research Group, and I'll show you 2 of the projects that we've done. This is a video of an installation that we did last September at Benaki Museum. This shows you that virtual reality is not a system you interact with a head-mounted display necessarily. You can invent more embodied ways to interact with the virtual environment, and that's exactly what we try to do here. So this is a virtual environment. It's a frame-based work, so you can't move, inside it at all. But you can interact with this object. The people who are positioned there in front of it can transform, change its form by means of their actual movement. This was an exhibition called Autopias, curated by Thanos Vovolis at Benaki Museum. It was about performance in the city. So in that case, we put the actual audience in the position of the performer. So the audience performed. And by transforming, the audience could transform the composition that we had created and at the same time interactively create the audioscape, the soundscape. So the sound here is interactively transformed by means of users' movement. I'll quickly go to the next latest experimentation that we have conducted, which is in the context of domes, the full dome. And we were lucky enough to participate in a research project which was called EMDL. And there's many very interesting different issues that come to when you discuss the creation of interactive content for large-scale displays like the dome. And so you see some glimpses into what we tested. And I'll show you the final work that we created and was presented at C.A.A.D, the Immersion Festival in Montreal on May 2015. This was done, the interface was done in collaboration with the IDAT research group and Professor Mike Phillips. And the work was again done by myself, Iuliani Theona, Haris Rizopoulos, and Penny Papageorgopoulou, as the previous piece you just saw. Here, you see a virtual environment which is multi-user. And the advantage of the dome is that you do not isolate yourself from other people as you do when you wear a head-mounted display. Here you can have a social experience. And that's exactly what we try to work with. We try to get users to interact with each other through interacting with the virtual environment. The audience could manipulate with an object that we gave them. They could manipulate parts of this composition, and while manipulating that, they were altering the form and at the same time the audio, the soundscape that was emitted from the object. So this was also an interactive audio piece. And it was a performative installation piece that lasted approximately 20-25 minutes. This is a very short version of it here. And as users interact with the elements, the objects, these objects get detached and they fly off to the ceiling, and then at some point the ceiling becomes very heavy and it all goes down on their heads and collapses. So I'll leave you for a short time to view and listen to this. As you see, there's a certain evolution on the soundscape, and as the ceiling becomes heavier, the sound it emits comes closer to you, and you listen more to it, to sort of a louder sort of version of the soundscape that is emitted from the ceiling. And there's a different set of sounds coming up from the ceiling, and there's a different set of sounds that comes to you from the sides of this hemispherical surface. It's about 139 speakers in this infrastructure, and we can utilize, so it's like 39 channel audio here implemented. And you see the person here holding the device that he interacts with the object. So with this device, you could just grab the object and turn it around any way you want and transform the sound at the same time in various ways. Thank you.